Welcome to the Roswell Business Podcast. Today we interview Kate Davis, talking about her life, business, and wise words to live by. Enjoy. All right, Kate, thank you for coming on and spending some time with us and allowing us to peek behind the curtain into a little bit about who you are, what you're about, so forth. I know over the years that I've gotten to know you, art director on film and on sets, a writer, an actual film director. You've done your own films, things like that. I know in your some of the fun things about who you are as a person. You've traveled the world all over. You were born overseas and lived stateside and lived other places, and you have neat adventures, as well as even now you do a lot of handiwork, remodeling homes, selling, buying, selling, moving, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of neat things about who you are and what make up Miss Davis. So. Pleasure to have you today. Tell us a little bit about you, where you come from, your background, that kind of stuff.
Well, I was born in Australia, and my parents had met in Germany. My mother English, my dad Australian. Post-war, they married in the late 50s. They decided that they were going to move, in utero, me and them back to Australia via the Caribbean, of all places. And then my brother and I were born in Australia. We moved when we were 6 and 5.
Okay. And
wound up in England, then in the Caribbean again, and then in the coastal U.S. because we lived on a boat, which was really fun. Especially,
that's always intrigued me to actually live on a boat. How crazy and cool is that?
Because the parents had lived on a smaller boat crossing the Atlantic and then wound up pregnant. We lived on a different boat, and it was a 48-foot gaff-rigged yawl, and it was a wooden boat, and it had actually not been part of the Dunkirk evacuation. It went further south to St. Malo and evacuated people out of that area.
Wow.
So, which is kind of fun because when I see the movie Dunkirk, for instance, the boats that they use, they still have, not just replicas of them, but they have the original ones, and they tried to use a few of them in that movie. So, but my parents found Klang. What a terrible name. Klang means lightning in some Indonesian dialect. And
that was the boat name?
Yeah, that was the boat name. We lived on her, and when my dad was offered a job in New York City, sold the boat and, went on from there. Then I got another job in Boston in publishing. So he was always a journalist. And my mother had been an orthopedic nurse's aide post World War II. So the combination of them, Dad the writer, but my mother was also a good writer, and she was also a great editor. I mean, she never put a word wrong in her entire life, and also very well read. She was very well traveled. And then had a keen business mind. And then my father, probably more creative in a way, also, but big time risk takers. He was kind of naughty too. He would do stuff like sit in his office and call somebody with a fake rumor and then see how long it took to get to the West Coast
Just
and then back again.
How funny.
I know.
Are there any unique ones that we might have heard?
No, it would be
he started.
It would be magazine sailing related industry. So it would be I don't even know what, but I knew that he did that.
So he'd just start a fire just so he could watch it burn.
Yeah, and he took his dog to work every day. and it was kind of a joke that you weren't really an employee until a dog had savaged you on the ankle from coming underneath the
Wow.
desk.
How funny.
Yeah, and but it was they started a family business, and
So was the starting the business the reason for coming back stateside, or did they come back stateside and then start, or?
well, they weren't originally from here, so
Okay.
So mother was from Western England,
Okay.
dad from southern New South Wales in
How
Australia.
cool is that?
And
Okay.
he was an information officer in Germany. She was an RAF adjutant.
So that's
And
the connection.
that's how they met,
Okay.
visiting people in hospital, same person in
Wow.
hospital. And but anyway, my mother taught my dad to sail, and then my dad wound up becoming a famous sailing writer.
Okay.
Came here to the United States for the 1967 America's Cup races,
Wow.
which was really fun. We lived on the boat off
Wow.
the Ida Lewis Yacht Club. We would row ashore, and we would bring the steward of the yacht club. We would bring him breakfast every morning.
Oh, wow.
And so we got to know people in Newport, Rhode Island, and that's where they decided to settle finally. And then Dad commuted to Boston. And that was back in the times where I'd go up with him. It was really fun. And here I am, like 12, 13 years
Okay.
old,
Yeah.
wandering around Boston by myself, going up to the Commons, going to Filene's basement, going to the New England Aquarium, and nobody ever bothered you back then.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, I didn't even think twice about it, actually.
Yeah.
So, but and then my parents started their own business in Newport, which has gone on to do really well and is still being published. I still see people at boat shows that, my parents had employed out of college. For instance,
Okay.
their first job would be like receptionist or something.
Yeah.
I was receptionist at one point. I was stamp licker, folding of mailers, and but we worked boat show. We did all sorts of stuff. We did, the whole family was involved. So
That's really cool.
kind of like how your family's involved too.
Yeah,
So I think it's good that kids know kind of what their parents are doing, not
Yeah.
just being hauled in there one day of the year because it's take your daughter to
Right.
work day.
Yeah, I know. Those of us that have been blessed to be raised around work, it does help you with your perspectives on life and how to do things. And even in, as we're recording this, we're in a weird time in our world
Right.
with craziness. But I think it's going to bring back a little bit more of that, where people are a little bit wiser, a little bit more on top of things going forward. I don't have, as you know, a pessimistic view about everything.
No, I don't either.
I may have a critical eye,
Right.
but don't look for the pessimism. I look for the optimism of how can we grow and be better. And so hearing your story, it is a good reminder. We do need to be families. We do need to pass on things that are important and wisdom. And how cool that you got to sit there and observe.
I just absorbed it. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And then I went on and worked in some publishing companies and never realized how, just growing up with it all, just how much had absorbed into me.
So when you went and worked for publication companies, what did that mean? What did you do? What was...
I've sold advertising. I've done public relations as well. And I actually edited a technical journal for a while. So I've done a lot of different things.
Were you always naturally outgoing, or did you learn that by doing that job? Or because you have a natural gift for that. You can make anybody feel at ease and at comfort,
That's true. I think it's because I act like a goofball sometimes, and they go, "Oh, okay, she's she's all right," like some big golden retriever.
Right.
I think I was an overly sensitive kid. Like when I was about 12, I realized I had to harden up
Okay.
because I was going to get trampled by life if I wasn't. And then I think I overreacted and became too hard.
Okay.
And the hardness still comes out because my mother was, pretty tough cookie. And every now and then, we all have those moments where we say or do something and we go, oh my God, I've turned into my mother, or, that was my father.
Right.
He would have said that, so, but they were a couple that worked well together that didn't really get along great.
Interesting.
Because they did divorce, for a while. But they had mutually beneficial sort of characteristics and talents.
So while they were together, it was at least complementary in that side of it.
Right. So guess when their birthdays were. Mother was born on Mozart's birthday.
Okay.
And Dad was born on Salieri's birthday.
Okay.
His teacher.
Yeah.
And if you believe that silly movie Amadeus.
Right.
But which a friend of mine says is not true at all. He wasn't
Really?
an airhead at all.
Okay.
It's completely falsified.
I hadn't studied it outside of
Yeah, I know. She's
playing
an opera
his
buff, and she
stuff
tells
when
me.
I would do piano as a kid, but that's
Yeah.
all. So,
Yes. I know.
Yeah.
You're a musician, right?
But I probably should dig out and go learn some of those people behind the music.
I know.
As I get older, those kind of things get more valuable to you.
They do.
So you worked in publications, did all of that. Bring us up over the years, because that's way over on the East Coast, and
Right.
we're here in
I got
Southern-
married, so that changes everything.
Okay.
So I married a columnist for Sailing Magazine
Okay.
who worked for Sunto Company out of Finland.
Okay.
And when I decided to close a horse farm that I was owning and running, we moved to Southern California, and I got divorced, went back into publishing, did a lot of
Okay.
things, and then wound up in Colorado and then down in the Big Bend, as a raft guide. I've done
wow.
everything.
Wow, yeah, I know.
Yeah, and I really liked it.
I learn
like
something
that.
every time I talk with you.
You don't get shoulders like these.
Yeah.
And then I liked it down there, so I bought 20 acres and
Okay.
built an adobe house, and I still have it. And of course, between Colorado and the Big Bend is Roswell in the middle. But I got here via Denton, Texas, because I went and worked on a doctorate in English at the University of North Texas.
Okay, wow.
And then when the college here wanted a teacher, they actually had 2 positions open, so they hired a wonderful friend of mine, and they hired me, and that's
Yeah.
how I wound up here.
Okay, wow. See, that was a missing puzzle piece for me. So I just learned something pretty neat.
I've done all sorts of stuff. I've cooked for ranches. I've run cattle. I've been a veterinary assistant,
Yeah.
a raft guide, restaurant owner. I've even raced mountain bikes, and I'm still a sailor, and I competed with horses,
I was
long
gonna say,
distance
you-
horse races for years.
In the years that I've known
Yeah.
you, just under this last, it's almost a decade, you take many months every year to go
Yeah.
out rafting and
I'm lucky.
sailing and
Yeah, I'm lucky in that because I don't have family, because I'm not married, and because I work for myself,
yeah.
fixing up these houses that I've bought in Roswell, and that I can just say, hey, I'm out of here.
Right.
I'm out of here.
Right.
I'm going to Maryland. I'm going to go sailing for 3 months.
Uh-huh.
And I have another family over there. I still have family on the East Coast. And, I only have one biological person in this country, my brother, and then
Yeah.
maybe a cousin in Ohio from Australia. But so I get adopted into families,
That
which
affords
is,
you a lot of freedoms though too,
yeah.
which is kind of nice.
It does.
Yeah.
Much more so than the average person. And
I've admired and sometimes even envied your ability to be nomadic when you need to. It's pretty cool.
you know what? Nomadic is a good way of putting it. Yeah. I I like traveling. I mean, I love
Yeah.
traveling. I mean, on Facebook the other day, people had that little questionnaire, put a smiley face next to all the countries and places
Right.
you've been. I had 95.
Wow.
The closest person had 94.
Okay.
And then it dropped all the way down to people in the 50s. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been to South America. I'd like to
Interesting.
go
All that
to
traveling and haven't been down there.
I know. I've been
Okay.
to Trinidad, which is right
Okay.
off.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah.
And I suspect on a ship we might have stopped in Venezuela, but it doesn't count.
Right.
So and I haven't spent a lot of time in Asia, but
Okay.
there's a lot of other little countries and
Right.
things, and of course, and I'd like to do the South Pacific.
Yeah.
And I thought that I would be good at single-handing sailing because that's what I do normally. But I really like to put the anchor down and have a good night's sleep.
Okay.
Because biologically can't stay up late at night.
Okay.
You will never catch me having a film at night all night long because I'm just a total zombie.
Yeah.
But
That will
so
be the
yeah.
second unit will get to do that.
Yeah,
privilege, right?
yes, in my dreams, my second unit. So the island hopping across the South Pacific probably isn't happening. I could crew for somebody else, but probably
Sure.
just not me. So that's my insanity.
No, that's very, very, very fun, and that's what I love about when we introduce this section of the deal is there's always neat little tidbits about people. I believe everyone is unique and has some just wonderful stories and pieces of who they are, and it's intriguing to me, and I love that. So let's transition into who you are today.
Oh,
The
right.
things that you've got your hands in. This is the Roswell Business Podcast, and you're in multiple business ventures and things that you. One thing I've noticed and watched over the years is you're not afraid to try something
no.
and go after stuff. And so, tell us a little bit.
Yeah, I'll eat anything once. So I think that being open to trying something is good. So after teaching at the university, which I enjoyed, I mean, there's a social and responsible, moral kind of aspect to teaching.
Yeah.
I had bought some very, very inexpensive little junker houses that the usual people would just look at and go, no, there's too much to do here.
Yeah.
And of course, growing up in the largest historic district in the country with colonial era houses, Victorian houses, federal style, all
Yeah.
that. It didn't bother me.
Yeah.
So, and because I had built sets for films and also for theater, I thought to myself one day, why don't you build sets like inside the house and make money off this? So, fingers crossed, I have a house closing next week.
Say you've done several just in the time that I've known you.
Right. We had one close. I had an investor, a friend of mine. We had a big house, 2-story house with the garage apartments, close last year.
Right.
And that had been abandoned for years. And every time I drive by it, I think, oh, it looks so nice like that now.
Right.
It's such a dismal house before. And
It's a cool thing to take something that isn't valued, bring value to it, and now it has purpose. That's just neat.
well, and yesterday I was working on a fence outside the old Connell grocery store, which I own on the corner of West Hendricks in South Michigan.
Uh-huh.
And a guy stopped and said, I remember coming here for cherry cokes when
How
I was
fun.
a kid. He said he walked all the way from the zoo.
Wow.
And so there's history
purpose. Yeah.
purpose as a kid. Yeah, what else did we?
It's
We
funny
walked
today,
everywhere.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
that's kind of a lost
I
thing.
know.
You did what? It's like, well, that was normal.
And
Yeah.
I bought the little house next door and the old grocery store, and so I stabilized them and fixed them up, and the woman across the street, Dolores, was standing on her porch one day, and she said to me, I love looking across the street and seeing that little yellow house. It makes me happy.
Wow.
Because it had been horrible. for
Okay.
years. I mean, it had every imaginable piece of siding on it and falling off, and animals in and out of it, and God knows
Yeah.
whatever else. But and I bought a place around the corner, and which is an adobe too, and it has garage apartments. So slowly fixing the adobe up, and but these were all really, really cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, the adobe 11 grand.
Yeah.
My
Wow.
house and the convenience store 14.
Wow.
My house on
Okay.
6th Street 36,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, a house on Pecan 26,000.
Yeah.
So and the perceived wisdom is to finance them, but at that rate, who's going to finance something
Yeah.
that needs this amount of work? So I just bought them outright.
Yeah.
Which is good in that I don't have to remember to pay
Yeah.
mortgages.
You don't have to stress over a bill coming and all that kind of
Right.
deal.
So,
And so, what are you doing with them now? I know you said that you flipped a few. Are
Right.
you using some for rentals?
I
or-
have 3 units rented
Okay.
right now, and I am paring down on purchases and projects.
What are for those that are listening? Because there's always people that are intrigued by this style of business and so forth. What are some of the pros and some of the cons that you've learned?
Okay, cons is the R word, which is renters.
Okay.
I am blessed right now to have 3 sets of really good renters. I've been through hell with a lot of renters. And everything from moving all the drug addict friends in, moving the boyfriend in, who then explains to me that it's his house and I'm not welcome to do repairs unless I call, and he's not on the lease.
Wow.
People moving in a ton of dogs, people junking out the place, ruining things.
Wow.
Screwing up the electrical boxes. There's a special way that people know how to still get electricity even though it's turned off, which then you have to
Interesting.
rebuild the whole box. So it's been bad. People refusing to pay, people taking on too much rent wise.
Okay.
And that happens a lot in New Mexico. Apparently, this state has the highest percentage of income paid for housing of most states.
Okay.
So people they see something, they want it, whatever. Now the good part about it is when things are going right, you can feel good. You've provided housing for somebody, which is an
Right.
essential. It's kind of like cooking.
Yeah.
And when they do actually put some water on the plants, I always put trees in and plants and whatever, so the properties always look a million times better after I'm done with it, which to me is good.
Yeah.
The bad part is when they get trashed, it almost physically hurts to see somebody
Because you put
do
all that work and effort.
Right,
and- yeah.
right. It's your baby.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that I'm someone just looking at starting being a part of home rental business, this kind of thing, similar to what you've been doing.
Right.
First of all, would you advise that? Second of all, what kind of wisdom things and so forth would you present?
You have to be very thick-skinned. You can't be friends with your renters.
Wow.
You actually wind up hating yourself for being a landlord, for being mean.
Interesting. Okay.
For having to kick them out,
Yeah.
evict them, whatever. It's not a fun business in that respect.
Okay.
So a lot of people will buy things and then have a rental company manage it for them.
Okay. Is that how you would advise someone?
Unless they want to get down and dirty and actually deal with the headache of the day-to-day, probably that would be the best thing.
Yeah.
And then not to buy low end like I did, but to buy something medium that could be quickly fixed up.
Okay.
And there's actually a lot of houses around here that older people but leave.
Right.
And so they'll still have the 70s era kitchen, and the whole place just needs a good coat of paint and
some basic
some updating,
Yeah.
and then it can be good to go. I would. Now, you can save yourself a whole lot of money if you know how to do things. So I learned plumbing because when I had a little restaurant, I was tired of waiting for the plumber to sober up to come over to fix something.
Yeah, this is one of the things I like about you is something needs to be done. If it's not timely enough, you're going to figure it out and get it done.
Oh my God, yeah. And I love wiring. I love pulling wire. I love wiring something. I'm not a big plumbing fan. But I have solved some real plumbing problems that even plumbers didn't figure out. And so I think because my dad would make me pull wires when we were fixing up the Victorian house we lived in, and he would send me down into lockers in the boat to go do something or other. So Dad and I had this kind of I was his helper, and we would do a lot of things ourselves. So my mother was a painter. Oh my God, she could paint anything.
Is that where your art side comes from, you think?
No, I mean rolling walls.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You mean like house painting?
Yes. So people would say, "What's Barbara doing?" And somebody would say, "Oh, she's painting the house."
Okay.
And people would think, "Oh, she's having the house painted." No, she's physically doing it herself.
Wow. Okay.
But the artistic side, some from my mother's side, because her sister was a potter, and my cousin as well, an artist in England, and then, but also, so this is cool, and this comes into the "you're never too old to learn something" category. Is I think when my dad was in his 60s, his second wife, and he went down to South Carolina or North Carolina to do one of those drawing on the left side of the brain things. And so the before picture that he did versus the after are so startling. And then after that, he took up oil painting.
Wow.
And some of his canvases are bizarre.
Okay.
And some of them are have moments of brilliance. So what I try to focus on is, that is the flash of brilliance, this lower corner. I've thought about cutting them all out and putting them into like one, but I have them, and so he learned. He was a photographer before, but he had some intrinsic, uneducated ability. Okay. So I always knew how to draw. Always knew how to draw. So, when I got instruction in doing it, it started making sense. Painting, I always knew how to paint, and and I'm no great master or anything, but I can paint stuff. And
well, I want to touch on another area of your life that's near and dear to you. I met you on a film set.
Right. And in
the
middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you were doing art direction and design and everything else that goes with that. How did you transition from the other things that you were doing and teaching at school and all this? And because I know that now that I know you a little bit more, you were in that scaling back from school completely into just living what you want to do in life, basically. And suddenly here's film.
Yes. Well, at the college, they do have film classes, and I helped on a film shootout through the state. It was called Dearth or Birthday or whatever, and I thought, oh, this is kind of fun, Yeah. And then Carl Lucas. Had brought a couple of films here, right? And I worked on them. I was an extra in one, and then I wound up being a design assistant for another one, and then I took a couple of the classes at the college, and then I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. And then we had that shootout. We used to have the shootout, right. And I worked on several of those films, and then finally I thought to myself, well, I'm going to write a script. I'd always written. I'd had published short stories.
Right, I was going to say, from your publishing
poems,
background,
but, and articles. I'd had nonfiction articles. published before. But so I sat down and I thought, okay, now how do you do this? Well, I had taken a screenplay class, in graduate school, so I knew what it's supposed to look like.
Okay.
So, there's a format. And so I just started writing. And the first one I did was Angels Over Roswell.
Right.
And I won Best Art Direction for that.
Uh-huh.
And it was set in one of my houses, and it was this country doctor's wife dealing with kids who have crash landed in a UFO. And the second one I did was Gas and Go,
Uh-huh.
where I took a building out in East Grand Plains and turned it into an old gas station, and then the crazy gas station owner thinks that the aliens are stealing his gas. And these are all 12-minute long,
right?
So they're short. And then I decided, well, why not do something interesting? I had a friend, Bruce, as you know, Bruce,
uh-huh.
and he has this crazy old motorcycle, and he wanted to do something like Easy Rider.
Yeah.
And Ghost Rider mixed together. And I'm thinking to myself, So I wrote a screenplay, essentially for him, got Johnny Hector, Robin Haynes,
right.
and Bruce Barta together as the three main characters in it. And it was a motorcycle buddy movie. And that came out only last year. My God, last year. And that was my first feature length.
Right.
And then after that, I thought, I need to write something about women. And because there's a lot of great women actors around. And so I wrote Cowgirls and Indians with Charlene Upton specifically in mind.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. So managed to rope you into helping, and Christian into helping.
Yeah.
And
which we've had a lot of fun.
We have a good, I have a good ensemble group of actors and crew.
Yeah.
People who can multitask, people who can think on their feet, people who are versatile. And so I've been very lucky in that respect.
So you stepped into film, and it kind of bit you back, didn't it? It's I've noticed just being around you and all that, you've really found a passion for it too.
I'm enjoying it. And what happens is once I've thought about an idea long enough, like Cowgirls and Indians was based on something that happened to me, but then I fictionalized it big time. When I get an idea and I think about it long enough, and I just sit down and it just comes out, and I can just go into writing mode, and I can produce 30 pages in no time flat.
Yeah.
And so I just did the Las Cruces Film Festival's screenplay contest for next year, and they gave us prompts. And they gave us a line of prompts, and had to take place in Las Cruces. And so I sat back and I thought, I don't know much about Las Cruces. I know the university's there.
Yeah.
Okay, there's the office. I needed to have an office. And so I thought to myself, okay, White Sands is close enough. And then I thought, And so I wound up writing this 20-page screenplay for a potential pilot called Reconquest. And it's got archaeology, it's got the military, it's got disease, unexpected disease. Of course, I'm writing it during the lockdown.
Right, yeah.
So I think it's pretty good. I mean, I think honestly, it could be a feature film,
fun.
Expanded out and whatever. But I tell you what, giving yourself a limit of 20 pages makes you really pare down and get rid of the crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really focus on, do I need this person?
So I hear you mention you've done several shorts and a couple of features. and you're still pushing at it, which is
Right.
pretty awesome. You didn't go to school for it. You didn't do all that kind of stuff that a lot of people will
Film
try
school,
to
yeah.
say, well, you have to go to film school. What's your advice to those out there that would sit and say, well, I've always wanted to make and I've always wanted to do?
Do it. Our phones, our telephones these days take great little films.
Yeah.
And you can you could practice with that. GoPros, you can practice with them. I did
Right.
an entire little feature with little short with a GoPro. They're hell to edit, but I would say learn how to edit. Go get Premiere Pro.
Yeah.
And teach yourself how to edit. They have things online. They have tutorials online.
Yeah.
And find people who are doing projects, volunteer on them, even if you're just running the clapper,
Right. Yeah,
or
that's good.
or toting things in and out, or painting something, or handing out snacks. You are there and you're absorbing what's going on. When a feature does come to Roswell or somewhere else, and throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah.
Get on as a PA, build that resume.
Now, everything on sets is always just roses, right?
Yeah, we are always on plan B.
Yeah.
Like the wind in Roswell, as we well know.
Right.
The wind in Roswell, you've got a perfectly decent day. Can you believe that we filmed in December and January? And it was absolutely gorgeous weather. And the minute we stopped filming, we got all that snow and rain and wind. And we lucked out this year. Then there's temperament.
Yeah.
In fact, managing temperament is probably the worst part of anything, really. I mean, it's good thing about film is actors generally are focused on what they're doing. It's usually not the actors. It's other stuff going on.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of, as you and I both know, there's a lot of boredom on set. So learning how to manage that in your own head can be a challenge. And so I like what you said, go volunteer, go spend some time, taste it, touch it, see if it really is what you love or not.
Be an extra.
You might just like the idea of Friday night, but not the actual work involved.
Right. Well, being an extra or background, people poo-poo it, right? But there's a list online that says people who started as background or extras, including Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
And others.
Yeah.
All started as extras, as background.
Right.
Well, and what that does is it gives you a chance to sit, and then you're told to act.
Yeah.
So you're following directions, you're watching what's going on, you learn by osmosis. You learn what's needed, what's not. Why is somebody doing something a certain way?
Right.
And when does the director step in? Who's that person shouting? Oh, that's the AD, that's the assistant director. What does last looks mean? It's all the checking the hair and whatever. Wait a minute, what's that PA doing? He's grabbing the Starbucks cup off the set.
Right.
It's very collaborative. And I like the collaborative aspect of it. I fully admit that I do not like my time being wasted.
Yeah.
So I do like a
Artists
production.
are always timely.
Oh, I know. Well, yeah.
That's a tough thing to get around because there's so many people involved. I know you and I've talked about that. It's just, it's a tough thing, and they need to have those egos. That's what makes them good artists. But sometimes it creates a lot of clash.
It can. People who get the jobs are the ones who have the fewest clashes, who are the easiest to get along with. And you'll hear people say, oh, so-and-so was wonderful to work with, or, and or someone will say, "I'll never hire that person again."
Right.
And
And
casting
to
directors.
be clear, like we all know, that doesn't mean that they were good or bad people. It just didn't work with those. Sometimes they're actually really great. It's just a personality thing that doesn't connect with that group or whatever. And so, yeah, it's a unique dynamic. We're going to have to stop the film conversation because we've only got so much time on this podcast. We'll probably have to have you come back at another time. And
Anytime.
we'll explore some of these other subjects. But let's talk about things that you can bring to the business people out there, regardless of what they're. You've touched a lot of businesses in your lifetime. You've picked up a lot of wisdom, a lot of pieces in theirs. What are some things, maybe your top 3, top 5 things that you live by or that are life truths that really bring some value to people that are listening?
I would say, unless you're deathly ill, always do at least one thing a day that moves you forward.
Wow.
In a project or your life.
Yeah.
So that can be something as simple as cleaning your house.
Okay.
Because that's clearing the space for you to be creative or to move forward. Or it could be dealing with the emails or making the phone calls. Or it could be, and if you're stuck inside and not able to go out, then, look at the bookshelf and see the books that you've half read and finish them. So always do at least one thing a day that moves you forward.
Wow, that's really good.
It's like unpacking. When you've moved somewhere and you're standing there amid all the boxes and you go, oh my God, I'll never get through all this. And I tell people, unpack one box a day.
Yeah.
And if you do get to 2 or 3, that's cool. But, just do it in small amounts.
Momentum might pick up.
Right.
But just get up and do.
And I think...
That's good.
And the hardest thing for any of us to understand is our weaknesses.
Yeah.
And so not to be afraid of saying sorry.
Wow.
Or you're right. That's a much better idea. Or yes, that's a much better way of doing it. So I think that you can't learn if your ego is there and it stops the stuff coming in. So if you can, you can get rid of the ego enough to just listen and pay attention.
Wow, that's good.
And then, because it's not really business-oriented advice, because I'm not really a business person, although I have.
But I think as we all get older, we learn that business is about these principles.
Yeah.
It's just, we happen to function. We might be a leather maker, like these couches. We might be the one building the house, but it's almost all the same principles because we're dealing with people. And
on that, you just reminded me of a good one is if you can't do it right the first time, you must have time to do it a second time. So always have pride in what you're doing and try to do the best you can. Don't just say, oh, well, nobody's going to care about this or whatever. But also, don't be so anal retentive that you can't move on from a task. So you have to know when something is okay and all right. So
you have to be able to, what's the right word? Know when something's complete and move on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
even if,
also how much time to spend on things.
Especially for artists.
Right.
Because we have a tendency to still see, well, it could still be improved. It could still be touched. It could,
God, yeah. Henry James, I guess, he touched his manuscripts constantly.
Okay.
So tuning them up. And there are textual critics, Wonderland and also Nightmare at the same time. So he never felt that they were ever done. Well, if you're fixing up a house, you have to reach a point where it's done.
So I guess lesson learned from doing homes is when there's a deadline, it forces action then, huh?
Oh, yeah, big time. And some people say, oh, I work great on a deadline right up to the last minute. No, they don't. No. See, what they're discounting is the fact is that they've been thinking about the deadline and what they're going to do the whole time, and then they force
finally
themselves.
At that last minute,
Or you can be the kind of person who does all the prep ahead of time and is still thinking, then gets a rough draft or
Yeah.
partial something done and then goes from there. And one final thing I would say, and this came from being in restaurant business, but I think because I had 2 little cafes.
Yeah.
Always feed one person free a day. And
I like
that
that.
it could be somebody who least expects it, like your best customer, or it could be the hobo who walks in off the street.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I had the taco stands and whatever, it would be more than one person. But so in a business, what is there something special that you could do for a client or for the homeowner or whatever? Does it mean that you leave the staging flowers in there for them? Do you, buy them a hose and put it outside for them to use? Do you, do you do something special in whatever it is that you do?
And explain why. What is your motivation behind that? I think I know what it is, but I want to hear your words.
It's not to get anything back, surprisingly. I think that when you give something away without any strings, I hate to say this, but miraculously, sooner or later, something good comes back to you. People say pay it forward.
Right.
Okay, yeah. My friend will say to me, "Did you give that bum $5?" I said, "Of course I did." I said, "He got beat up over the weekend. He went to the trauma unit, he whatever." And I said, "Did you see his face?" And I said, "You know what? It's my money. I want to do it."
So when you follow that principle, what have you found inside?
Oh, you don't. I feel good. Okay, but I don't do it to feel good.
Right.
It just makes me. Sometimes I completely forget that I've done it.
Yeah.
But somebody will come back years later. So here's a great story.
This has become such a natural habit of yours.
Yeah, and
That's cool.
it's bad. And then my friends say, "Oh my God, she's always picking up strays," And it does get me into trouble every now and then.
Sure.
But like giving an apartment to somebody who then trashes it. But anyway, when the Denny's was downtown, it used to be great people watching in the four corners. And so I was sitting at the counter talking with Gloria, the waitress, and a woman came and sat down, and she was sort of talking to Gloria and said that she was going on a job interview that day in a couple of hours' time. And I pulled Gloria aside. I said, "I want to buy her breakfast." And I said, "But don't say anything."
Yeah.
And then about a month later, I was sitting in there, and she walked up to me and she said, "Did you buy me breakfast about a month ago?" I said, looked at her and I said, I maybe. And she said, "I got that job."
Wow.
That was so sweet. And
and
it's
you
like
had a small part of that unnowingly.
Unknowingly.
That's pretty
I know.
cool.
Maybe being fed made her confident
Right.
in herself.
So we're headed into the last few minutes of the program. Really appreciate you being here and spending some time with us and giving us some glimpses. You have such amazing stories throughout your life. We could probably go hours. And I don't mean just droll on. I mean like very interesting things, which is neat. So when you had heard me invite you onto the program and so forth, is there anything that we hadn't talked on today that you were like, "Ooh, I'd love to share this"?
I just, I think the only thing I would say is that probably for most people, and I need to do it too, is managing the craziness.
Okay.
And the spontaneity, because I can do things that are scary would not be the right thing for somebody else to do.
Wow. Okay.
And so, but not being afraid to take the leap. So trust in your skills, trust in yourself, and if whatever higher power you have, whatever friends, resources you have,
Yeah.
And focus on something that you want to do. Now, I say that, but most of the things I wind up doing are just sort of spur of the moment, crazy stuff that works out.
But you function well in that.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sometimes I'm not, but
You just hide it well.
well, yeah, I'll go home and have a Tasmanian devil moment.
Yeah.
You know, he always
Right,
ends
right.
with a.
Right.
You know, sometimes I'll have a moment like that. I've been on set with you where we've had difficulties, and I have realized that me focusing on an actress who can't remember her lines is making her worse. So I've just walked off.
Yeah.
You know, but that again falls in the category of knowing your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I really appreciate when I can do that, because I know that you'll take care of what needs to be done, you know, and I can walk off and pray that she gets her lines, for instance. And,
Well, you're very kind. It's a privilege to assist and to be a part.
It's been
And
fun.
So, let's say that the viewers would like to connect with you on some level.
Yeah.
How would they do that? What's the best way?
I'm on Facebook. So you just type Kate Davis, Roswell, New Mexico, and I
Okay.
should pop up. You can find me on IMDb, which is the International Movie Database.
Right.
And I'm Kate Davis 14
Okay.
with Roman numerals. So
Okay.
XIV, and you can contact me through you or you know, the podcast, whatever they would like.
You'd enjoy connecting and
Yeah,
sharing
yeah.
things with them and so forth. Cool.
Yeah, it'd be fun, and everybody, you know, who's doing something around here knows that I'm willing to volunteer to help.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of contacts and resources, so and I like to share that, because knowledge is useless if you don't use it and share it.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, thank you
Thank you.
again. It's a privilege to have you here to
Thank
hear a
you.
little bit about who you are, and just to see another doer in our city getting things done.
doers.
So
Doers.
All
That's
right.
the trick. We're doers. Thank
Thanks.
you.
if you like today's program, subscribe to the format you are on, whether it be YouTube or a podcast channel. If you'd like to connect with me, go to donovanfulkerson.com. It has details about myself, our companies, and how to connect. If you're following our social media, my personal pages, well, it's just that. It has a lot of personal things, including spiritual content and details that I find interesting to me. Our social accounts for our businesses, obviously, is that. There will be products and day-to-day activities and things that relate to those specific companies. Thank you for connecting. Please share and get the word out. We'll see you next time.